Ladies and gentlemen, when it's Tuesday, it's the Raw Leadership Talk. We are glad to resume the Raw Leadership Talk. Apologies for missing out last week. But this week, this day, which is God ordained, we are here to bring you the Raw Leadership Talk. Where are you joining us from? We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to know where you're connecting with us from. Dr. Paul Kariuki, all the way from Durban, South Africa. We are set. Even as we look at the topic of the day. How to propel women into senior management. How to propel women into leadership and senior management. Thank you very much for connecting with us. The Raw Leadership Talk discussion will begin shortly. Dr. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm blessed. I'm fantastic. I'm winning. I'm so happy to be here again for another conversation. I hope you're well.
I'm well. We are mourning the passing on of our third president, Emilio Mwai Kibaki. So the nation is in grief, but we are also celebrating his life for having been there to lead for 10 years. And irrespective of the failures, that was a tremendous time of economic growth. He showed the way in terms of leadership. And
Yes.
as this being a raw leadership talk, or we keep it raw, it will be important for us to acknowledge that President Kibaki, irrespective of the human failures, he led this nation through robust economic growth during that time, from 2003 all the way to 2013. Good. So today we want to look at how to propel women into leadership and senior management. But maybe we want to do a recap of our last session that we had about inclusive leadership, what it is and why it is important to have inclusive leadership in an organization. I don't know, what's your take as we do the recap?
Well, as we said last 2 weeks ago when we had the session, we indicated that it's very important to be conscious that COVID-19 has reconfigured the workplace. And that has not happened just in one country, but around the world. And for any organization that seeks to stay relevant, innovative, and become a force in the field of their endeavors, it has to have an inclusive culture within its own ranks. Having said that, is because the workforce now has become global. Just like us sitting here, we're in two different countries, but we are able to connect. And that also has happened with COVID-19. It has created opportunities for everyone to be able to work necessarily not in person, but work in different spaces wherever they are, so long as they're digitally connected, which means now the barriers that did exist before COVID, or they were there, but they were not as pronounced as they've become now pronounced. Now they have been rendered powerless because of digitization. And of course, digitization has also come with its own, pros and cons. But one of the things digitization has done as far as workplace is concerned is to create an environment where we can promote inclusive leadership as a norm in organizations by creating spaces where people are able to interact with each other, even not in person, and be able to improve the overall organizational performance as well as individual performance as people share skills and experiences through various mechanisms. So inclusive leadership, we said in this case, is that as our mentor, Dr. John Maxwell says, everything begins and ends with a leader. So we say that there is a cultural mindset shift upon leaders who wants to remain on the cutting edge as they transform the organizations and the way they function to make sure that the organizations remain more effective, more innovative, more productive, and yield better results in the endeavors that they embark on. So we said that's one of the major benefits of inclusive leadership, because you're able to harness people's skills, people's
Yes.
experiences, and talents towards one direction and a common vision.
Good. And now to the topic of the day, Dr. Paul, setting the scene, promoting inclusive leadership through mentorship is vital for post-pandemic recovery. And especially when we look at the whole aspect of women, that has brought a lot of noise in our developed countries today. And Africa has not been left around, when we talk about inclusivity, either it's in the area of politics or in the workplace, or even in the social aspect. I don't know, what is your take in promoting inclusive leadership through mentorship being a vital thing as far as these times of recovery are concerned?
This is very important, as we've been discussing, that it is
Yes,
not possible for any organization to become an organization of choice globally
yes,
right now if they are not able to move with times and adapt to the changing times. And part of that adaptation is letting go opportunities that have been there in the past that reinforce certain stereotypes or mindsets that
yes,
became a problem in terms of innovation, creativity, and high level performance. One of those impediments is the value that organizations place on women as a
yes,
gender in the first place, but also as a social construct. Remember, in our continent, especially Africa, there is very high levels of patriarchy, where if it has to be done and it to be done well, it must be a man. And
yes,
what we are talking about here is saying is that we are recognizing, when we talk about inclusive leadership or inclusive organizations in the first place, we're talking
yes,
about an equal appreciation that women are also equally equipped, talented, skilled, and need to
mhm,
be given an opportunity for them to express those talents and gifts and create their own future,
yes,
working together with men in that case. And from that point of view, we start deconstructing social norms that limit the ability of women to move up the ladder, especially
yes,
in management levels. It's sad to say that even now, globally, the picture around women in senior management is still not very pleasing. And the same picture also looks into political leadership in different countries, especially on our continent, and then scales down to organizations within countries and around the continent. So there is
yes,
a greater appreciation now when we talk about inclusive leadership, is that we
mhm,
have to be conscious as leaders of organization to create opportunities that women can be able to ascend up ladders within organizational ranks, but
yes.
not just because they are women, but because we appreciate that they are talented, they are gifted, they are skilled, and they deserve a place in organizations, even in management. And so when we
And,
talk about
and that's a very important subject, because sometimes there's a lot of noise, and people want to be given chances just because of the gender. They say, we are not included. We are not
mm,
included. So it's more about the gender rather than the capacity, really, the
yes,
intellectual capacity to and skill to be able
mm,
to serve in that
mm,
capacity that needs a person of that particular aspect. And so I don't know what's your take, especially in Africa right now, with the whole gender movement rising up. There is really more about women need to be there. That what do we do to make sure it's not just women, but
mhm.
women with capacity to function at that level?
So there are several things that organizations need to do to ensure that that transition is made and made possible. The first of
Yes.
all is to appreciate that there is a need in organizational mindset about how
Mhm.
the organizations themselves, as institutions, do
Yes.
perceive the role of women in organization. And so without
Mhm.
that realization, it's very easy to continue the old conventional way of thinking that they do not deserve a place and they do not qualify a place because of their gender and the things that the society has constructed around the role of women in organization. So the first
Mhm.
place to begin with that realization. Once that realization has been acknowledged, and the leadership of the organization is ready to make a change. The second thing is to, of course, revise organizational policies in the same to ensure that they do facilitate the
Yes.
recognition of women and the expertise and the skills and the gifts that they bring into organization as equal members, as just like men or their
Yes.
male counterparts rather in organizations. And then the
Mhm.
third thing to do is to create a conducive environment where mentorship is made possible in cases where women have not been able to ascend to certain levels of organizational leadership or management because of lack of skill or lack of you know educational qualifications. And so an organization that is serious about changing the environment that makes it possible for women to ascend into various levels of organizational leadership and management, there has to
Yes.
be a proper mentoring culture that values the development of women as equal partners and equal employees like men, and to
Mhm.
create what I refer to as a psychologically safe environment
Yes.
where that there is no room for intimidation, there's no room of undervaluing the essence of
Yes.
the of women in that organization, and therefore it inhibits the capacity of that organization to create an environment where women feel it's not tokenism, it's an appreciation of their
Mhm.
talents and abilities. And so
Yes.
once that environment has been created, the fourth thing that the organization need to do is to ensure that mentorship actually does happen.
Oh,
Resources
yeah.
must be set aside, for example, to create room for women to be given an opportunity to go for further training, if that's one of the things that needs to be done, or even to
Mhm.
be for coaches to be hired, yeah, so
Mhm.
that if that expertise that is needed is not within the organization, women need to know that there is an possibility for an external intervention funded
Mhm.
by an organization that truly values the contribution that they make in the organization. Those are leadership decisions that must be
Yes.
taken, and the leaders must be courageous enough to demonstrate that it's not just about equalizing by gender, it's an appreciation of skill and expertise. And if it's lacking, they are willing to spend. In other words, they're willing to invest in the
Mhm.
development of such individuals. So, for example, what the African Center of Public Speaking does, which
Yes.
an organization should invest into such and say, we're going to send one or two of our female colleagues into such a
Yeah.
center to help them in growing their capabilities to engage with the public, for example.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
that's a conscious decision that must be budgeted for and resources be allocated to facilitate that kind of investment. And so those are shifts that need to take place in organizations that want to remain women friendly and also want to remain on the cutting edge of our modern times in terms of understanding the role and the contribution that women bring into organization as leaders.
Mhm. But then I know you have touched on mentorship aspect being necessary, but intentional mentorship, Dr. Paul, that intentional mentorship that you are able to zoom in into particular ladies who are junior and begin to see a future in them and begin to mentor them towards the future. Because you can see that if they are given a fair chance in the next few years, they can actually occupy maybe the office of the CEO, the office of the general manager, or chief accountant. How strategic can you be without being seen that you're being biased in all this, Salim?
Yeah, it boils down to organizational policy, because
Yes.
for you to for any organization to create a pathway for women to ascend to higher levels of leadership in management of organization, it has
Yes.
to be institutionalized as a policy that
Hmm.
organization X values the input and the contribution that women bring into organization, and this is how we do it in this organization. So you'll
Yes.
find most of the time organizations do not even have such policies that
Hmm.
specifically speak on how gender equality is enabled and gender equity, because those are
Yes.
two different things. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there need to be a policy that really states that aside from there is no room for women harassment in the organization, there must be also an equal policy that talks about how do they find their career development within the organization that is fully supported
Mhm.
institutionally, you see, so that they can be able to explore those opportunities. So that's first thing to do. The next
Mhm.
thing to do, of course, is to ensure that there is what I would refer to as cultural competency within the
Mhm.
organization. In other
Yeah.
words, in African society that is very heavily bent towards patriarchy, we need to
Mhm.
reorientate ourselves as organizational leaders and the teams we lead to be culturally aware when we entertain biases unconsciously that can
Yes.
inhibit women from being able to participate in leadership opportunities, even decision making,
Mhm.
irrespective of where they are within the organizational rank. They don't have to be deputy CEO to make decisions. It could be a simple person as the receptionist. Why is
Mhm.
it that we do not have male receptionists? Only we think that the best receptionist can ever be is a female. Yeah. So those are
Mhm.
the kind of norms that needs to be challenged by
Yes.
organizational leadership to ensure that there is, when we talk about equity, we are saying that there is no positions that are reserved for women only and men only. Equity
Mhm.
means that there can be any person from different gender can be able to take opportunity that is
Mhm.
available. So that cultural competency must be
Yes.
absorbed institutionally within the organization, strategically to facilitate the ascendancy of women within the different ranks of organization, including decision-making spaces, because those are the ones that are heavily contested and they remain like a male domain. So it feels if when a woman has an opportunity and is qualified for and is skilled for and gifted for, it's like they're being done a favor if they gain into
Yes.
opportunity for decision making. And if they're
Mhm.
not in decision making and happen to have made a decision, it's usually met with fierceness
Yes.
from top leadership because it seems as if it's a transgression, which should
Mhm.
not be. Organizations that are transformative and impactful
Mhm.
acknowledge those cultural biases that are hidden within systems, and they need to be deinstitutionalized to facilitate women empowerment within organization. There are very subtle things that do happen in organization that can still, even with the best
Yes.
intention of organization, still hinder women ability to to grow in their careers and express their giftings and possibilities, because the institution's culture is not culturally competent. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the areas that I find in my course of work in these areas. I find most organizations lack that ability to be able to see that there are certain aspects within organization that
Yes.
really, even with the best intention, do hinder proper women development within the organization.
I have observed something, Dr. Paul, and I appreciate your views, but I observed something in working with women leaders that
Mhm.
sometimes they feel they should create a tough demeanor, almost like that of a man, for them to be taken serious in an organization as they
Mhm.
try to climb up the ladder. And I've had to really talk to some of them as my clients and tell them, you don't really need to change yourself and try to create a demeanor of that masculinity, toughness, even though you are a lady. You simply need to be you and do things the right way. I don't know whether you have experienced this in your leadership. And what do you do to help women understand that to go up the ladder, they don't really need to transform themselves into that masculinity toughness. They just need to be women who are skilled, intelligent to climb up the ladder.
You've hit it on the nail. I think that's the best way to really to respond to it. And I've done the same in my experiences where it does, because of the societal constructs of how women are perceived within society. There is always that feeling of a deficit, where
Yes.
sometimes women feel that they are not good enough to be able to take up opportunities, whether it's in business, whether it's in professions like medicine, engineering, science, and all that. So because the society has constructed for so long and
Yes.
made it become a norm, there are certain domains you have to have a certain persona for you to flourish in them and you to become who you should be able to become in future. We say we're saying that is not the way it should be. First, do not change who you are so that you can be accepted by society.
Yes.
Because once that happens, it means in no time you will lose even your own identity. And
Mhm.
what really society respects people for, whether male or female, is the ability to know that they are valued and they are principled at the same time. And the issue of principle comes from one's identity, how you see yourself in this world. Because
Yes.
as you see yourself, so you are taken by the world. If you present yourself to this world as a person who do not stand by anything, including your own value system, then you will have to change several times for you to be able to function, which means at
Yes.
some certain stage, the real you will come out, and maybe at that time you will have to be chucked out because nobody really wants to be around you. So the first thing is to make sure that you are safe and secure in your own identity as a
Mhm.
person. Yeah. The second thing is to discover that you have giftings that are make you unique, and
Yes.
you need to express them those, and you do not have to apologize for those. If you're a
Mhm.
good speaker, you're a good speaker, and that is it. You cannot sing, but you're a good speaker. You cannot
Yes.
write a book, but you're a good speaker. And you need to be comfortable within that range of your gifting and make sure that the world accepts you that way, and you don't have to change it so that you can fit in. The third thing is to make sure that whichever space you occupy, let your giftings do find expression so that
Yes.
you are able to make, remember, I always say this, you are your own brand. If you do
Mhm.
not present yourself as a brand that can be accepted and respected by the world, in whichever marketplace you're occupying, then it means even if there is good institutional arrangement to ensure that women empowerment takes place, there is good legislation and policies to make sure that happens, there is all the support that you need around mentorship and coaching. If there is
Mhm.
something defective in your own system as an individual, it will not make things work wherever you're going and wherever you intend to go. So have a clear sense of what your giftings are. Make sure that whenever you have an opportunity to express the gifting, you express them with confidence because
Yes.
that's where your identity comes from. And then, of course, remember, being your own brand, you can go as far as you want and you can break it as far as you want to break it.
Mhm.
The world will receive you the way you present yourself. So
Yes.
if a person is constantly waiting for validation so that
Yes.
they can function in the world, then they better need to do something very urgently. They always say the marketplace is a cruel place at the same time and a very
Mhm.
rewarding place. It's a cruel place if you're waiting for validation, but it's a
Mhm.
rewarding place if you know your space and your uniqueness and you know what you can do that nobody else can do better than what you do. And you're not in
Wonderful.
competition with
Mhm.
anyone, you are your
Yes.
own brand. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts right there. Wonderful thoughts. What would be your parting shot in 1 minute, Dr. Paul, even as we bring this show today to a close?
I would like to encourage our viewers out there, and especially if there are any women who are listening to us who aspire for opportunities for leadership and management. Firstly, they need to recognize that it's not fault to aspire and to dream for those opportunities. Secondly, they need to be able to be bold enough and courageous to pursue those dreams and make sure, the third thing, that they actually step into those spaces. If they are not provided for them, they can invent them and create niches that do give them opportunities to flourish and explore those possibilities with confidence. And
Yes.
lastly, but not least, they must not wait for validation. They qualify for it and they should get it.
Wonderful thoughts right there. Ladies and gentlemen, you have had it. You have had it. That women have an opportunity to climb up the ladder into positions of leadership and senior management. And this is something that all leaders, both male and women, must deliberately do. They must be intentional to create this opportunity and to encourage both genders and specifically women also to know that this opportunity is there for them. Raise their confidence, move them to another level so that inclusivity can happen in our organization, in our nations, in our communities, so that at the end of the day, we can achieve the result that we want. It's been a wonderful time, Dr. Paul. Always a pleasure to have you at the Raw Leadership Talk. Looking forward to have more and more of this in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.